The courtroom went completely silent. Everyone in the packed hall seemed to hold their breath as a small 5-year-old girl with messy brown hair walked up to the judge's bench. Her little shoes squeaked on the polished floor, and her oversized, worn dress hung loosely on her tiny body. Judge Margaret Collins sat in her wheelchair behind the tall wooden desk, her hands resting on the armrests that had felt like a prison for the last 3 years. In more than 20 years on the bench, she had seen many strange things, but never anything like this. A child this young had never approached her bench during a serious trial. The girl lifted her head, her bright green eyes sparkling with something almost magical. She took a deep breath and spoke with such clarity that even the people in the back row could hear her perfectly. "Judge lady," the child said, pressing her small hands against the wooden bench. "If you let my daddy go free, I promise I will make your legs work again." The room exploded in shock. People gasped, whispered, and laughed all at once. Some pointed at the girl and shook their heads. Others looked at her with pity, convinced she was just a confused child who didn't understand how the world really worked. But Judge Collins didn't laugh. She stared at the little girl with wide eyes, feeling something stir in her heart that she hadn't felt in years. Now, tell me where you're watching from in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel to support our growth. 3 weeks earlier, Daniel Harris was working long hours at construction sites, doing everything he could to care for his daughter Emma. Every morning he woke at 5, made breakfast for her, and kissed her forehead before heading to work. His wife had died when Emma was only 2 years old, leaving him to raise their little girl alone. Emma was not like other children. She suffered from severe asthma that made it hard for her to breathe, especially during the winter months. Often she woke in the middle of the night coughing and gasping for air. Daniel would hold her close and sing softly until she calmed down. The medicine that kept her healthy was painfully expensive. Daniel worked as many hours as possible, but construction wages were not enough to cover all of Emma's medical needs. He had already sold his car, his watch, and even his wedding ring to pay for her treatments. One cold Tuesday morning, Emma woke with a high fever. Her little body was burning, and she could barely keep her eyes open. Daniel touched her forehead and felt panic surge through him like ice water. "Daddy," Emma whispered weakly, her voice rough, "I can't breathe very well." His heart broke as he watched his daughter struggle. He knew she needed medicine right away, but he had already spent his last $20 on groceries the day before. The pharmacy would not give him medication without payment, and the hospital would ask for insurance papers he didn't have. Desperate, he called his boss, Mr. Clark, and begged for an advance on his paycheck. "Daniel, I wish I could help you," Mr. Clark said over the phone. "But company policy doesn't allow advances. You know that." Daniel dropped to his knees beside Emma's bed, watching her small hands shake as her lips turned slightly blue. He realized that without medicine, she might not make it through the night. That evening, after Emma finally drifted into a restless sleep, Daniel made the hardest choice of his life. He put on his old jacket, kissed his daughter's forehead, and stepped out into the cold night air. The Oak Avenue pharmacy was crowded even at 8 in the evening. Families came for medicine, elderly people picked up prescriptions, and teenagers bought cough drops for winter colds. Daniel stood outside the glass doors for 10 minutes, trembling not from the cold but from fear. He had never stolen anything in his life. He was a hardworking man who always tried to do what was right. But his daughter's suffering pushed him past his breaking point. Pulling his baseball cap low, he walked into the bright pharmacy. The shelves were lined with bottles and boxes that could save Emma's life. Daniel found the fever medicine for children and the special breathing treatment she needed. Together they cost more than he earned in 2 full days of work. He glanced around the store. The pharmacist was busy helping an elderly woman, and the cashier counted bills at the register. His heartbeat pounded so loudly he was sure others could hear it. Slipping the medicine into his jacket, he headed toward the exit as calmly as he could. Just as he reached the door, a firm hand gripped his shoulder. "Excuse me, sir," said Officer Daniels, the store's security guard, his voice serious though his eyes showed kindness. "I'll need you to empty your pockets." Daniel's world collapsed. He considered running, but knew it would only make things worse. With tears streaming down his face, he pulled out the medicine and handed it over. "Please," he begged. "My little girl is very sick. She needs this medicine or she might die. I don't have money, but I swear I'll find a way to pay it back." The guard looked at him with sympathy but shook his head. "I'm sorry, sir. I have to call the police. That's the law." Within 20 minutes, police cars with flashing lights surrounded the pharmacy. Daniel was handcuffed and placed in the back of a cruiser while neighbors and strangers looked on. All he could think about was Emma at home, sick and alone, waiting for her father to return with medicine. News of his arrest spread quickly through Fairview. Their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, found Emma crying in the apartment and took her to St. Mary's Hospital. The doctors gave her the medication she needed, but told Mrs. Thompson that Emma would have to be placed in foster care until her father's legal troubles were resolved. Judge Margaret Collins was assigned to Daniel's case. She was known across the county as a fair but strict judge who never accepted excuses, even the most heartbreaking ones. 3 years earlier, she had survived a terrible car accident that left her unable to walk. Since then, she had thrown herself into her work with even greater focus on upholding the law. The morning of Daniel's trial, the county courthouse was packed with community members. Some came to support him, believing he was a good father caught in a desperate situation. Others insisted that stealing was wrong, no matter the reason. Daniel sat at the defendant's table in a borrowed suit, his hands clasped and his eyes red from crying. He hadn't seen Emma in 2 weeks, and Mrs. Thompson told him the little girl asked about him every single day. Judge Collins rolled her wheelchair to the bench and surveyed the crowded courtroom. She had read his file the night before and knew all the details, a desperate father who had stolen medicine for his sick child. Cases like this made her work both difficult and heartbreaking. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Margaret Collins," announced Mr. Johnson, the bailiff. Everyone stood, though they could all see that the judge herself could not. The prosecutor, a young man named Eric Morales, rose to present the case. He argued that stealing was against the law, businesses needed protection, and making exceptions for emotional stories would only create chaos. "Your Honor," Morales said, adjusting his tie, "while we all feel sympathy for Mr. Harris, we cannot allow emotions to override justice. He committed theft when he took merchandise worth over $100 and attempted to leave without paying." Daniel's lawyer, an overworked public defender named Laura Bennett, did her best to defend him. She spoke of his clean record, his love for his daughter, and the impossible choice he had faced. But Judge Collins had heard such arguments many times before. The law was clear, and Judge Margaret Collins knew her duty was to uphold it, no matter what her heart might feel. She was just about to speak when the heavy courtroom doors creaked open. Every head turned as Mrs. Thompson entered, holding the hand of a small girl with brown hair and shining green eyes. It was Emma. The child scanned the large courtroom with wide, searching eyes. When she spotted her father sitting at the defense table, her face lit up. She broke into a run, her little voice carrying across the silent room. "Daddy!" Mr. Johnson, the bailiff, started to stop her, but Judge Collins raised her hand. "Let her go to her father," she said softly. Emma rushed into Daniel's arms, and he held her tightly, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Daddy made a terrible mistake," he whispered. Emma leaned back, looking at him with those bright green eyes. "It's okay, Daddy. I know you were only trying to help me feel better." The entire courtroom watched their reunion. Many wiped away tears, even some who had come expecting to see Daniel punished. Judge Collins cleared her throat. "Mr. Harris, while I understand your reasons, the law is clear about theft. You took something that wasn't yours, and there must be consequences." That was the moment Emma turned to the judge for the first time. She noticed the wheelchair, the sadness on Judge Collins's face, and something beyond what adults could see. Emma had always been different. From a young age, she could sense things about people, their pain, their sorrow, their hidden hopes. Without asking anyone, she walked away from her father and stepped toward the judge's bench. Her small shoes tapped against the hard floor, and everyone watched in silence as the little girl approached one of the most powerful people in the room. "Judge," Emma said confidently, looking up. "My daddy is a good man. He only took the medicine because I was very sick, and he loves me so much." Judge Collins leaned forward slightly in her wheelchair. "I understand, darling. But your father still broke the law." Emma nodded solemnly, as if she understood every word. Then she did something no one could have predicted. She reached out and gently placed her hand on the judge's. "Judge lady, I know your legs don't work, and that makes you very sad inside. My daddy told me that when people are hurt, it's hard for them to see the love around them. The room was so silent you could hear a pin drop. Judge Collins felt her breath catch. How could this little girl know the pain she carried every day? I have a gift, Emma continued, keeping her small hand on the judge's. I can help people feel better when they're hurting. If you let my daddy go home with me, I promise I'll make your legs work again. Chaos broke out instantly. People laughed, argued, and shouted. Some dismissed the child as confused. The prosecutor, Eric Morales, objected loudly, insisting this had no place in court. But Judge Collins couldn't take her eyes off Emma. There was something about her, something extraordinary, almost magical. The judge had given up hope of walking years ago. Yet, looking into Emma's eyes, she felt a spark of possibility she thought was gone forever. Order! Judge Collins struck her gavel. Order in my courtroom. The noise subsided, and all eyes turned back to her and the little girl. Emma, Judge Collins said gently, what you're saying is impossible. Doctors told me long ago that I would never walk again. Emma smiled, her whole face glowing. Sometimes doctors don't know everything. Sometimes miracles happen when people believe and love enough. She let go of the judge's hand and stepped back. I'm not asking you to believe me right now, Judge Lady. Just give me a chance to prove it. Let my daddy come home, and I'll show you that impossible things can happen. Judge Collins looked at Daniel, then at Emma, then at the courtroom filled with people holding their breath. Her logical mind screamed that this was absurd. Children couldn't heal paralyzed legs. Miracles didn't happen in courtrooms. The law was the law. But her heart, locked away since her accident, whispered a different question. What if? Her fingers tightened on the armrests of her wheelchair as everyone leaned forward, waiting for her decision. Daniel held his breath. His future, and his daughter's, depended on what came next. Judge Collins looked down at Emma again. The girl stood perfectly still, her green eyes full of confidence and love. She wasn't pleading or crying. She was simply offering a gift, a promise that seemed impossible yet strangely real. Your Honor, Eric Morales interrupted, surely you're not considering. Mr. Morales, Judge Collins said firmly, I am considering everything. She turned her gaze to the audience. Some faces were hopeful, others shocked, a few even angry. This wasn't how trials were supposed to go. Judges followed the law, not the promises of 5-year-old children. But Judge Collins had spent 3 long years in her wheelchair, 3 years believing her life was over, 3 years going through the motions without truly living. Maybe it was time to take a leap of faith. The silence stretched for what felt like hours, though only minutes passed. Finally, Judge Collins straightened and looked directly at Emma. Young lady, she said, her voice echoing across the courtroom, you've made me a very serious promise. Do you understand that promises must never be broken? Emma nodded solemnly. Yes, Judge Lady. I always keep my promises. And you truly believe you can help me walk again? I don't just believe, Emma answered with the kind of certainty only children possess. I know it. Judge Collins drew in a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke again. Mr. Harris, you committed a crime, and under normal circumstances I would sentence you to jail and fines. But your daughter has made me an offer that I cannot ignore. The courtroom buzzed with gasps and murmurs. Therefore, Judge Collins continued, I will do something I have never done in over 20 years on this bench. I am postponing your sentencing for 30 days. If, within that time, your daughter fulfills her promise, all charges against you will be dismissed. Eric Morales leapt to his feet. Your Honor, this is highly irregular. You cannot base a legal decision on a child's impossible claims. Mr. Morales, Judge Collins replied calmly, in 30 days, we will know whether her claims are truly impossible or not. Until then, Mr. Harris, you are free to go home with your daughter. Daniel could hardly believe what he heard. He looked from Emma to the judge and back to his daughter, tears streaming down his face. For now, at least, he was going home. But then Judge Collins raised her hand once more. However, she said, her voice cutting through the courtroom, if your daughter cannot fulfill her promise within 30 days, Mr. Harris, you will return to this courtroom to face not only the original charges, but additional ones for contempt of court and for allowing your child to make false claims to a judge. The joy on Daniel's face quickly faded as he realized the weight of the judge's words. If Emma could not keep her promise, his punishment would be even harsher than before. Before he could say anything, Emma walked back to him and took his hand. "Don't worry, Daddy," she said with her usual confident smile. "Everything is going to be fine." As Mr. Johnson announced that court was dismissed, people began leaving the courtroom in clusters, buzzing about what they had just witnessed. Some whispered that Emma truly had a gift, while others insisted Judge Collins had lost her mind. Daniel knelt and hugged his daughter tightly. "Emma, sweetheart, what you did was very brave. But what if you can't really heal the judge? What if this only makes things worse?" Emma looked at him with those deep green eyes and smiled. "Daddy, do you remember what Mommy always said about miracles?" Tears filled Daniel's eyes as he recalled his late wife's favorite saying, "Miracles happen when love is stronger than fear." "That's right," Emma said, squeezing his hand. "And I love you more than I'm afraid of anything. The judge is afraid, too. But she has more love in her heart than she knows. I'm going to help her find it again." Hand in hand, they walked out of the courthouse. Daniel's chest filled with both hope and dread. For now, he was free, but in 30 days he would return to stand before Judge Collins once again. And this time, his fate would rest entirely on whether his 5-year-old daughter could perform what everyone else believed to be impossible. Judge Collins remained in the empty courtroom long after everyone else had gone. She sat in her wheelchair, staring at the spot where Emma had stood, replaying the scene over and over in her mind. What had she done? In more than 20 years on the bench, she had never based a ruling on emotion instead of the law. She had built her career on fairness, logic, and consistency. And now she had agreed to dismiss charges against a thief if his little girl could somehow heal her paralyzed legs. Yet as she sat alone in that courtroom, she realized something that startled her. For the first time in 3 years, she was looking forward to tomorrow. For the first time since her accident, she had hope again, even if it seemed impossible. She rolled her wheelchair to the window and watched the sun setting, streaking the sky with orange and pink. Somewhere out there, a little girl with green eyes was preparing to try the impossible. Despite everything her rational mind told her, Judge Collins found herself believing that maybe, just maybe, miracles could be real. What she didn't yet know was that Emma's promise would spark a chain of events none of them could have imagined, and the next 30 days would change their lives in ways that went far beyond healing paralyzed legs. The real miracle was only beginning. The next morning, Judge Collins woke with a feeling she hadn't known in 3 years: excitement. Sunlight streamed through her bedroom window as she wondered what Emma was doing at that very moment. Was the little girl already planning how to help her? Or had she simply spoken an impossible promise? Collins transferred herself from her bed into her wheelchair as she had done every morning since the accident. But today felt different. Today she had hope. Across town, Daniel was making breakfast for Emma in their small apartment. He watched her eat cereal, amazed by how calm she seemed. If he had just promised to perform a miracle in 30 days, he would be terrified. But Emma hummed quietly, swinging her legs beneath the table as if nothing unusual had happened. "Emma," Daniel said carefully, sitting down across from her, "sweetheart, about what you promised the judge yesterday?" "I know, Daddy," Emma interrupted between spoonfuls of cereal. "You're worried because you can't see my gift yet. But don't worry. It's going to work." Daniel felt his heart skip. "What do you mean, your gift? Emma, you've never healed anyone before." She looked at him with wise eyes far older than her years. "Do you remember when Mrs. Thompson hurt her back last month and couldn't get out of bed?" Daniel nodded. Their elderly neighbor had been bedridden for a week. "Remember how I asked if I could visit her? I held her hand and told her a story about a magic garden where flowers could sing. The next day, her back felt better." Daniel's eyes widened. He remembered how quickly Mrs. Thompson had improved, though he had thought it was just luck. "And do you remember when Jake Clark down the hall broke his arm?" Emma asked. Daniel nodded again. Their neighbor's 8-year-old son had crashed his bike and badly broken his arm. The doctor said it would take 6 weeks to heal. "I drew him a picture of a superhero with strong arms," Emma explained matter-of-factly. "And I told him his arm would be stronger than ever. It healed in 3 weeks instead of 6. Daniel stared at his daughter, his mind racing. Could it be true? Had Emma been helping people heal without him realizing? "But sweetheart," he said softly, "helping a sore back or speeding up a broken arm isn't the same as making someone who can't walk suddenly stand again." Emma finished her cereal and looked at him seriously. Daddy, Judge Collins's legs aren't broken like Jake's arm. Her legs are fine. The problem is in her heart. What do you mean, sweetheart? Daniel asked. When I touched her hand yesterday, I felt all the sadness inside her, Emma explained. She's been sad and afraid for so long that she's forgotten how to believe in good things. Sometimes when people are sad for too long, their bodies forget how to work properly too. Daniel didn't know what to say. His 5-year-old daughter was speaking as though she understood things most adults couldn't. So, how will you help her? He finally asked. Emma's face brightened. I'll remind her how to feel joy. And when she remembers happiness, her legs will remember how to walk. That same morning, Judge Collins sat in her home office, trying to concentrate on other cases. But she couldn't stop thinking about Emma's confident smile and the strange feeling she'd had when the little girl touched her hand. Over the past 3 years she had seen countless doctors, all of them saying the same thing: her spinal cord was too damaged, she would never walk again. It was medically impossible. Her phone rang, breaking her thoughts. It was Dr. Miller, her longtime physician. Margaret, he said, I heard about what happened in your courtroom yesterday. The whole town is talking about it. I'm sure they are, she replied, embarrassed. Listen, I've been your doctor for 15 years, and I care about you. But don't let this give you false hope. Your injury is permanent. Collins was quiet. Dr. Miller, what if the injury isn't only physical? What if healing is about more than broken bones and damaged nerves? Maggie, he said gently, please don't let desperation lead you into false hope. No matter how sweet that little girl is, she cannot heal your paralysis. When she hung up, doubt crept in. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was being foolish. But then she remembered the warmth she had felt when Emma touched her hand, the tingling she hadn't known in her legs since before the accident. That afternoon, Daniel took Emma to Willow Park. He watched her play on the swings, her laughter ringing like music through the crisp air. Other children played nearby, and Daniel noticed something he hadn't before: when a child fell or cried, most kids looked away. But not Emma. Whenever another child got hurt, Emma would rush over, help them up, and somehow make them feel better. She would whisper something in their ear, give them a quick hug, or simply hold their hand until the tears stopped. She's special, that one, came a voice behind Daniel. He turned and saw an elderly man sitting on a nearby bench. The man had kind eyes and a gentle smile. I'm sorry, what? Daniel asked. Your daughter, the old man said, nodding toward Emma. I've been bringing my grandson to this park for 2 years, and I've never seen a child like her. She has what my grandmother used to call the gift. The gift? Daniel repeated, sitting down beside him. Some people are born with the ability to heal others, the man explained. Not with medicine or surgery, but with love and faith. My grandmother had it. She could make sick people well simply by believing in them and helping them believe in themselves. Daniel watched as Emma comforted a crying boy with a scraped knee. She knelt beside him, whispered something, and gently touched his leg. Within moments, the boy stopped crying and ran back to join his friends. But is it real? Daniel asked quietly. Or do people just feel better because someone shows them kindness? The old man smiled. Does it matter? If love and kindness can heal, isn't that the truest magic of all? 3 days later, Judge Margaret Collins still couldn't stop thinking about Emma. She tried to return to her normal routine, but everything felt different. She found herself exercising her arms more, eating healthier meals, and even smiling at strangers she passed on the street. That Thursday morning, she made a decision that surprised even herself. She picked up the phone and called Daniel's number from the court files. Hello, Daniel answered nervously. Mr. Harris, this is Judge Collins, she said. I was wondering if I might speak with Emma. Daniel hesitated, probably wondering if this was some sort of trap. Yes, Your Honor. She's right here. Hello, Judge Lady, came Emma's cheerful voice through the receiver. Hello, Emma, Collins replied, unable to stop herself from smiling at the sound. I was wondering how you plan to help me. Oh, I'm so glad you called, Emma said excitedly. I've been thinking about you every day. Could we meet somewhere so we can be friends first? It's hard to help someone if you don't really know them. Collins was taken aback. In all her years on the bench, no one had ever asked to be her friend before meeting her in court. Where would you like to meet? She asked. Do you know Willow Park? There's a pond with ducks and lots of pretty flowers, Emma suggested. Could you meet me there tomorrow at 3? Collins glanced at her calendar. She had planned to review case files that afternoon, but something told her this mattered more. Yes, Emma, I'll meet you there. Wonderful, Emma said. And Judge Collins, don't bring your judge clothes or your serious judge face. Just bring yourself, okay? The next afternoon, Collins rolled her wheelchair to Willow Park, feeling more nervous than she had in years. She wore a simple blue dress instead of her robe and had even put on a little makeup for the first time in months. She spotted Emma by the duck pond in a yellow sundress, tossing breadcrumbs to the birds. Daniel sat on a nearby bench, watching his daughter with love and worry mixed on his face. Judge Collins. Emma called out, waving enthusiastically. Come sit with me. Collins wheeled herself over. Emma immediately dug into her bag and poured breadcrumbs into her hand. Here, she said. The ducks are really hungry today. For the next hour, Collins found herself doing things she hadn't done in years, feeding ducks, listening to Emma's stories about each bird's personality, even laughing when a bold duck tried to climb onto her wheelchair for more food. Judge Collins, Emma said at last as they watched the ducks glide across the pond, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Before your accident, what was your favorite thing to do? Collins thought for a moment. I used to love dancing, she admitted softly. I took ballet as a girl, and even as an adult I would dance around my house when I was happy. Dancing? Emma clapped her hands. I love dancing, too. Do you miss it? Tears welled in Collins's eyes. Yes, I miss it very much. Emma stood and held out her hand. Would you like to dance with me right now? Collins looked at her in surprise. Emma, I can't dance. I can't stand. You don't need to stand to dance, Emma said with a smile. Your arms can dance. Your head can dance. Your heart can dance. Come on, I'll show you. Emma began to move her arms gracefully, as if swimming through the air. She tilted her head and spun slowly, showing that her whole body could join the rhythm even without her feet. Collins watched, and then, almost without realizing, started moving her arms in time with Emma's. She rolled her shoulders and tilted her head, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she was dancing again. You're dancing, Judge Collins. Emma said joyfully. You're dancing. Collins looked at her arms moving through the air and knew Emma was right. It wasn't the way she used to dance, but it was beautiful and freeing. Tears of joy rolled down her face as she moved with the little girl, feeling as if a heavy weight had lifted from her chest. How do you feel? Emma asked, still dancing. I feel, Collins paused, searching for words. I feel alive. When they finished, Emma walked over to Collins's wheelchair and placed her hands gently on her knees. Judge Collins, she said softly, your legs aren't broken. They're just asleep. They're waiting for your heart to wake up completely. Collins looked down at the child's hands. She couldn't feel the touch, but she sensed it all the same. What do you mean? She asked. When you were hurt in the accident, your body was injured, but your spirit was hurt, too, Emma explained. Your spirit got so scared and sad that it went to sleep. And when your spirit is asleep, sometimes your body doesn't work right either. Collins studied this wise little girl. And you think you can wake my spirit? Emma smiled. I think your spirit is already waking up. Didn't you feel it when we were dancing? Collins thought of the joy she had felt only moments before, the lightness in her heart, the sense of being alive again. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I did feel it. That's the first step, Emma said. Will you come back tomorrow? We can feed the ducks again, maybe dance some more, and I'll tell you stories about all the beautiful things in the world that are waiting for you. Collins nodded, more hopeful than she had been in years. Yes, Emma, I'll come back. As she wheeled away from the park, she felt something she hadn't known in 3 years, excitement for tomorrow. It felt like her life was beginning again. But that evening, Emma's gift would face its first true test. Daniel was making dinner when the phone rang. It was Mrs. Thompson, her voice frantic. Daniel, you need to come quickly. There's been an accident at the park. It's Judge Collins. Daniel's blood ran cold. What happened? Is she all right? Daniel asked, his voice tight with fear. I don't know everything, Mrs. Thompson said quickly, but someone saw her wheelchair tip near the pond. They think she may have hit her head. The ambulance is taking her to the hospital right now. Daniel turned to Emma, who was calmly coloring at the kitchen table. She looked up with her wise green eyes. "Daddy," she said softly, "Judge Collins is going to be okay. But this is the test. This is how we'll know if miracles are real." Daniel's hands shook as he grabbed his keys. If something serious had happened to Judge Collins, their fragile agreement would collapse. He would end up in jail, and Emma would return to foster care. But more than that, he was worried for the kind woman who had given them a chance. "Come on, Emma," he said. "We need to go to the hospital." "I know, Daddy," Emma replied, setting down her crayons. "She needs us now more than ever." Her spirit had just begun to wake up, and now it's frightened again. But don't worry. Sometimes the greatest miracles happen when everything looks impossible. As they rushed to St. Mary's Hospital, Daniel prayed desperately that his daughter was right. Because if Emma couldn't help Judge Collins now, at her darkest moment, then maybe miracles really were only fairy tales. The hospital waiting room was crowded with anxious voices and heavy with the smell of disinfectant. Daniel sat on a hard plastic chair, clutching Emma's small hand while they waited for news. Word of the accident had already spread through Fairview, and neighbors filled the room. Then Dr. Miller came through the double doors, his face grave. Daniel's heart sank at the sight. "How is she, doctor?" he asked, jumping to his feet. Dr. Miller looked around at the waiting faces. Judge Collins struck her head when her wheelchair tipped near the pond. "She has a severe concussion and has been unconscious for 2 hours." Gasps and worried murmurs swept through the crowd. Daniel felt the world spin around him. "Will she be all right?" Mrs. Thompson asked. "We're doing everything we can," Dr. Miller said carefully. "But head injuries are unpredictable. The next 24 hours will be critical. She needs to wake up soon, or," he stopped, but everyone understood. Daniel looked down at Emma, expecting tears or fear. Instead, her face was calm and determined. "Doctor," she said clearly, "may I see Judge Collins, please?" Dr. Miller blinked in surprise and crouched to her level. "Little one, Judge Collins is very sick. She can't have visitors." "But I can help her," Emma answered simply. "And she needs me more than ever right now." Daniel placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Sweetheart, maybe we should wait until the doctor says it's okay." Emma shook her head firmly. "Daddy, remember what I told you about her spirit being asleep? Now it's not just asleep, it's lost. The accident frightened her so much that her spirit doesn't know how to return to her body. I need to help guide it back." The entire waiting room went silent, listening to the 5-year-old speak with the seriousness of an adult. Some people looked doubtful, others hopeful, and a few seemed to think Emma might be their only chance. Dr. Miller straightened slowly. "I'm sorry, but children aren't allowed in the intensive care unit." "Doctor," came a voice from behind them. Everyone turned to see Eric Morales, the prosecutor from Daniel's trial. He looked weary, his usual sharpness gone. "Mr. Morales," Daniel said, startled to see him. "I heard about Judge Collins's accident on the radio," Morales said. He hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. "I came because I wanted to apologize." "Apologize?" Daniel asked. "For not believing," Morales admitted quietly. "I've seen Judge Collins handle hundreds of cases, and I've never once seen her make an emotional decision. She's always been logical and strict. But something about your daughter made her willing to take a leap of faith. If she believed in Emma, maybe I should too." He turned to Dr. Miller. "Doctor, isn't there any way this child can see her?" Dr. Miller frowned, torn. "Even if I allowed it, which is against policy, Judge Collins is unconscious. She wouldn't even know Emma was there." "But I would know," Emma said firmly. "And her spirit would know, even if her body doesn't." An elderly woman in the corner spoke up. "Doctor, what harm could it do? If the judge doesn't wake up soon anyway." Her voice trailed off, but the meaning was clear. Dr. Miller looked around at all the hopeful faces. He had practiced medicine for 30 years, always trusting science. But sometimes, science wasn't enough. 5 minutes, he said finally. "The child may have 5 minutes with Judge Collins. But she won't be alone. Adults must be with her." Daniel squeezed Emma's hand. "Are you sure about this, sweetheart?" Emma looked up at him with her wise green eyes. "Daddy, do you remember what Mommy used to say about the hardest times?" Tears filled Daniel's eyes as he nodded. His wife used to say that miracles happen in the hardest times, because that's when people need them most. That's right, Emma said with a smile. And Judge Collins needs a miracle now more than ever. Dr. Miller led them down a long white hallway into the intensive care unit. The room was quiet except for the steady beeping of machines. Judge Collins lay in the bed, looking smaller and more fragile than Daniel had ever seen. Tubes and wires connected her to monitors, and her face was pale and still. She looked so peaceful, Emma whispered as she walked toward the bed without fear. Daniel stayed back by the door with Dr. Miller, his heart pounding as his daughter approached the unconscious judge. Emma climbed onto a chair beside the bed so she could reach. She studied the judge's still face for a long moment before gently placing her small hand on her arm. "Hello, Judge Collins," she whispered. "I know you can't hear me with your ears right now, but I hope you can hear me with your heart." The machines continued their steady rhythm. Collins didn't move. "I know you're scared," Emma went on, her voice soft and full of love. "When you fell at the park, it reminded you of your accident, didn't it? It made you remember the fear when your body was hurt. Now your spirit is hiding again." Dr. Miller watched in astonishment as the little girl spoke to his patient as though they were having a conversation. "But Judge Collins, you need to remember something," Emma said, gently stroking her arm. "Do you remember how it felt when we danced by the duck pond? Do you remember the lightness, the happiness? That joy is still inside you. It's just hiding because it's afraid." Daniel held his breath, watching his daughter pour her heart out. "Your spirit isn't broken," Emma whispered. "It's just lost, like being in a dark forest at night. But I can see the path back to the light, and I'll help guide you home." Emma closed her eyes and placed both hands on the judge's arm. The room seemed to glow with a warm golden light, though Daniel couldn't tell if he was seeing it or only feeling it. "Do you see the path, Judge Collins?" Emma whispered. "It's made of all the beautiful memories you've forgotten. The memory of you dancing as a child. The memory of your first day as a judge, when you were so excited to help people. The memory of us feeding the ducks and laughing together." Dr. Miller glanced at the monitors beside Judge Collins's bed. Her heart rate, which had been slow and irregular, began to steady and grow stronger. "That's it," Emma said gently. "You're following the path back to the light. You're remembering who you truly are, not just a judge in a wheelchair, but a whole person filled with love, hope, and dreams." Judge Collins's fingers twitched. "She's responding," Dr. Miller whispered in amazement. Emma opened her eyes and smiled at the unconscious woman. "Judge Collins, I want you to remember something very important. Your accident didn't take away your ability to dance. It only changed the way you dance. And your wheelchair doesn't make you less of a person. It only gives you a different way to move through the world." The judge's eyelids fluttered. "Come back to us, Judge Collins," Emma said, her voice steady and full of love. "Come back, because the world needs you. Come back, because you still have so much dancing left to do. Come back, because miracles are real, and you're about to be part of one." Suddenly, Collins's eyes opened. She blinked several times, disoriented and confused. "Judge Collins," Emma cried joyfully, "you're awake." Collins turned her head slowly toward Emma's bright, smiling face. "Emma," she whispered weakly. "What happened? Where am I?" "You're in St. Mary's Hospital," Dr. Miller said, rushing to check her vitals. "You had an accident at the park and hit your head. How do you feel?" Collins looked around the hospital room, piecing things together. "I was at the park, feeding the ducks with Emma, and then," her voice trailed off. "Your wheelchair tipped over," Daniel said softly. "You've been unconscious for hours." Collins studied Emma in wonder. "But I was dreaming. Or maybe it wasn't a dream. I was lost in darkness, and I heard your voice calling me. You showed me a path of light and helped me find my way back." Emma smiled. "It wasn't a dream, Judge Collins. Sometimes when people are hurt, their spirits get lost and need help finding the way home. I just reminded you." Dr. Miller shone a small flashlight into her eyes. "Remarkable," he murmured. "Judge Collins, can you tell me what year it is? Do you know where you are?" Collins answered every question clearly. Her mind was sharp, with no sign of brain damage. "Doctor," she said, her voice trembling, "I feel different. Better than I have in years." "Well, after a serious head injury, it's normal to feel disoriented," Dr. Miller explained. "No," she shook her head. "That's not what I mean. I feel better in my heart. I feel alive, hopeful, and happy." Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at Emma. "What did you do to me?" Emma giggled. "I didn't do anything to you, Judge Collins. I just helped you remember who you really are beneath all that sadness." Collins tried to sit up, and Dr. Miller assisted her. Suddenly, she gasped and looked at her legs. "Doctor," she said, her voice shaking, "I can feel my legs." Dr. Miller frowned. Sometimes after head trauma, patients imagine sensations that aren't really there. "No," Collins said firmly. "I can truly feel them." She stared at her legs beneath the blanket and focused. Her right foot moved slightly. Gasps filled the room. "That's impossible," Dr. Miller whispered. Collins concentrated harder, and both feet shifted beneath the blanket. "Emma," she cried, tears running down her face, "is this really happening?" Emma clapped her hands with delight. "Judge Collins, your spirit is fully awake now. And when your spirit woke up completely, it reminded your body how to work again." Dr. Miller stared in shock. "This defies every medical explanation. Your spinal cord was severely damaged. There's no way you should be moving your legs." Collins turned to Emma with overwhelming gratitude. "You did this, didn't you? You made it happen." Emma shook her head. "No, Judge Collins. We did it together. I only showed you the way back to believing in yourself. You did the real work." Over the next hour, her leg movements grew stronger and more controlled. Dr. Miller ran test after test, confirming what everyone could already see: Judge Collins was regaining sensation and movement in her legs. Collins shook her head in disbelief. "I owe you an apology. I wanted to believe, but deep down I thought Emma's promise was impossible. I thought I was just being kind to a desperate father and his little girl." She looked at Emma, her face full of wonder. "But you've shown me that miracles aren't just possible. They're real. They happen when people love enough to believe in the impossible." She straightened in her hospital bed. "Mr. Harris, all charges against you are permanently dropped. More than that, I'll recommend you for a job. The hospital is looking for a maintenance supervisor, and I'll personally see that they hire you. It includes full health insurance for you and Emma." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Judge Collins, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't thank me," she said, looking at Emma. "Thank your incredible daughter, who has reminded all of us that love can truly heal." 3 weeks later, Judge Collins walked into her courtroom for the first time in 3 years. She leaned on a cane and moved slowly, but she was walking. The packed courtroom erupted in applause as she made her way to the bench. In the front row sat Daniel and Emma. Daniel wore a crisp shirt for his first day at his new job, and Emma glowed in a bright yellow dress like sunshine itself. Collins took her seat and smiled at the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin today's proceedings, I have something to say." The room fell silent. 3 weeks ago, a little girl taught me that miracles happen when love is stronger than fear. She showed me that healing isn't only about fixing broken bones, it's about healing broken spirits. And she proved that sometimes the most impossible things become possible when we believe in each other. She looked straight at Emma and smiled. "Today, I am not just a judge who once sat in a wheelchair. I am a woman who has learned to dance in new ways, who has rediscovered hope, and who has witnessed firsthand that miracles are real." She lifted her gavel and scanned the courtroom. "Now, let's get to work. There is justice to serve and people to help." As court began, Emma whispered to her father, "Daddy, do you see how happy Judge Collins looks now?" "Yes, sweetheart," Daniel replied with pride. "That's what real healing looks like. It's not just about making broken things work again," Emma said wisely. "It's about helping people remember how beautiful life can be." 6 months later, Judge Collins danced at her wedding to Dr. Miller, who had fallen in love not just with her recovery, but with her renewed joy for life. She moved slowly and carefully, but she danced. In the front row, Daniel and Emma watched proudly as their friend began her new chapter. Emma, serving as flower girl, had scattered rose petals down the aisle while humming a cheerful tune. As Judge Collins and Dr. Miller swayed together in their first dance as husband and wife, Emma leaned close to her father. "Daddy, do you know the best part about miracles?" "What's that, sweetheart?" Emma smiled with the same radiant expression that had begun their incredible journey. "The best part is that once people see one miracle, they start believing in all sorts of wonderful things. And when people believe in wonderful things happen all the time." Daniel pulled his daughter into a tight embrace as they watched their friends dance. He thought of his late wife's favorite saying, "Miracles happen when love is stronger than fear." Looking at his remarkable little girl, seeing Judge Collins dance with pure joy, and standing among a community that had learned to believe in the impossible, Daniel understood something deeply. Miracles were not rare events. With Emma in the world, miracles were unfolding every single day.